and welcome to Film Reel. My name is Jess, and in this video we'll take a look at the real truth behind a film that follows the meteoric rise of a group of rappers deemed the world's most dangerous group, how they resisted the FBI's warning, sold millions of records, and changed the landscape of music and culture forever. Let's talk about Straight Outta Compton.
Yo, Dre, what up? I got something to say.
Straight Outta Compton is a 2015 film directed by F. Gary Gray. The film depicts the origins and subsequent demise of the group NWA.
And what does NWA stand for, huh?
Niggas with attitudes.
Talks of an NWA biopic began back in 2010, and several directors were approached to helm the project before Gary eventually decided to. So, who exactly were the members of the group NWA? First up, we have Eric Wright, better known as Eazy-E. In the film, he's portrayed by Jason Mitchell. Eazy-E was the founder of the record label Ruthless Records, and he then recruited Andre Young, aka Dr. Dre, to write for the label. In the film, Dr. Dre is portrayed by Corey Hawkins. Another member recruited to write for the label was O'Shea Jackson, aka Ice Cube. In the film, he's portrayed by O'Shea Jackson Jr. Yes, his son in real life. Antoine Carabee, aka DJ Yeller, played by Neil Brown Jr., and Lorenzo Patterson, aka MC Ren, played by Aldous Hodge, round out the remaining members of NWA. Of course, we cannot talk about NWA without mentioning their manager, Jerry Heller. In the film, he's portrayed by Paul Giamatti. The film follows the inception of NWA in 1986 and chronicles their pursuits as they move from Compton to the rest of the world. Staying true to its namesake, the film was shot on location in Compton, California, as well as in Los Angeles. Shooting in Compton proved to be challenging for the filmmakers, as just 7 days into filming, a drive-by shooting happened near the film set, in front of the cast and crew. Although no one affiliated with the film was injured, one person was shot dead. And unfortunately, this would not be the last fatal incident to be involved in the filming of Straight Outta Compton. Alright, so now that we have a brief understanding of the main characters and the setting, let's get into the events that unfold in the film Straight Outta Compton. And naturally, spoiler warning. In 1986, Compton, California has become a chaotic dystopia due to street gangs, drug dealers, and police brutality. One night, Eazy-E narrowly evades a police raid at a crack house. The following day, Dr. Dre is struggling with what he wants to do in life. Meanwhile, Ice Cube is a high school senior aspiring to become a rapper. Intrigued by Cube's reality raps reflecting on the crime, gang violence, and police harassment that they and other African Americans have endured recently, Dre convinces Eazy to fund a start-up record label, Ruthless Records, with Dre as producer. In the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Eazy-E, a high school dropout and drug dealer living in Compton. Led by Eazy-E, NWA started to take shape in 1986 when Eazy approached Dr. Dre and DJ Yeller to produce tracks for his new record label, Ruthless Records. The trio then recruited Ice Cube and MC Ren to write for the label. In the film, Ruthless Records is established after an incident in which Dre punches a man who attacks his little brother and is then arrested. When Eazy bails Dre out of jail, the two agree to start work on tracks for the new record label. This isn't entirely accurate. Dre did end up in jail, but it was not because of a violent altercation. He was actually arrested for unpaid parking tickets on his car. Dre paged Eazy to bail him out, and in return for the favor, Dre agreed to produce tracks for Eazy's new label. Using the small fortune he'd procured from dealing, Eazy founded an independent record label, Ruthless Records. When their song Boys in the Hood is rejected by a New York rap group, Dre convinces Eazy to perform it instead. It becomes a local hit, and Eazy, Cube, Dre, DJ Yella, and MC Ren form the group NWA. Eazy accepts Jerry Heller's offer to manage NWA and co-run Ruthless, and Priority Records offers NWA a record deal. In the film, we see Eazy-E enlist the help of Ice Cube to write the rap for a New York-based group he was managing at the time. It is true that when the group rejected the lines that Ice Cube had written, Dr. Dre convinced Eazy to perform the song instead. The result? Eazy's first single became an underground hit. Apparently, Eazy wasn't naturally musical in the way that Dre and Cube were, but he managed to overcome this through Dr. Dre's guidance and by putting on his Eazy-E persona, which included really putting on a pair of wraparound shades. In the film, Jerry Heller, a longtime industry man, hears Boys in the Hood and asks Eazy to go into business together. The film depicts Jerry joining Ruthless Records and becoming the manager of Eazy and NWA. This is not exactly true. Jerry was actually the co-founder of Ruthless Records and established the record label together with Eazy. Jerry Heller, who was not involved in the making of the film, said that it was actually Eazy who sought him out and not the other way around. In his memoir, Ruthless, Jerry details how Eazy actually paid a mutual acquaintance to introduce him to Jerry. In pursuit of a distribution deal, NWA performed a successful show at Skateland Roller Rink in 1987. Jerry then landed the group a deal at Priority Records. This is all accurately depicted in the film, down to the exact same posters that they actually had for their performance. And the Priority deal really did go down the following week. While recording their debut album Straight Outta Compton in 1988, the group is harassed by police due to their race and appearance, prompting Cube to compose a diss track towards the police, titled F the Police. Heller, having witnessed the altercation and being disgusted by the officers, allows the track without hesitation. The album becomes a controversial hit due to its explicit lyrics, and the group's style is dubbed gangster rap by the press. It is true that the members of NWA did unfortunately actually get harassed outside of the studio by the police while they were recording Straight Outta Compton. But it is false that this was Cube's inspiration behind writing the track. In reality, Cube actually came up with the song before they even started recording the album. Dr. Dre was actually the inspiration, because one day he and Eazy were driving along the highway, firing their paintball guns into traffic. The police got a hold of them, and Dre ended up having to check himself into jail every weekend. A teenage Ice Cube was fed up with the situation, since no Dr. Dre meant no hip-hop and no making music on the weekends. So Cube wrote F the Police. Dre was not keen to make the track at the time, obviously, as he was still having to go into jail and deal with the police every weekend. But when it was time to record the album, Cube brought the song out again, and Dr. Dre and everyone else in NWA was on board to record it. If we take a look at the iconic album cover of Straight Outta Compton, we can see that there are 6 members in the picture when we're only ever introduced to 5 in the film. Kim Renard Nasal, better known as Arabian Prince, was one of the founding members of NWA. But he left the group in 1988 owing to royalty and contract disagreements. Despite his contribution to NWA being completely ignored in the film, he says that he harbors no ill will to the producers or the members of NWA. As shown in the film, Straight Outta Compton was an explosive success and an instant classic, despite receiving no play on MTV or the radio. The media really did describe NWA's style as gangster rap, even though none of the members in NWA were or have ever been involved in a gang. During a 1989 concert tour, the FBI demands NWA to not perform Fuck the Police because it encourages violence against law enforcement. Police in Detroit forbid them from performing the song, but they perform it anyway. The concert stalls and the police arrest the group, resulting in a riot. NWA really did receive a letter from the FBI warning them not to perform their song at their shows. The letter generated massive publicity for the group and boosted sales, as now everybody wanted to own the album that the FBI wanted banned. In the film, we see NWA at a show in Detroit where police warn them against performing their most popular song. When Ice Cube begins the track, police rush the stage and the band scatters. It is true that the local police showed up in force at NWA's Detroit performance. While the crowd chanted "Fuck the Police," Cube attempted to start the song but was interrupted when the amplifiers were turned off and undercover police rushed the stage. This caused a riot from the concert attendees. In the film, we see NWA make a run for it before being surrounded and arrested. This is false. The group was actually escorted back to the safety of their hotel rooms. According to Jerry, the group was arrested later on in the evening after they had left their hotel rooms again. Ice Cube tells a different version of the story, explaining how the police corralled them back at the hotel, but nothing serious really happened. The members of NWA and the police just discussed sports, and the members of NWA signed autographs for the police's kids. The FBI backed down after pressure from the American Civil Liberties Union. The legendary letter from the FBI is currently on display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Heller delays the individual members' contracts with Ruthless, and when he insists that Cube should sign without legal representation, Cube quits the group. His debut solo album, America's Most Wanted, is released in 1990. But when Priority Records is unable to pay him his advance on his next album, he wrecks the label head's office. It is true that just over a year after Straight Outta Compton's release, Ice Cube really did leave NWA because of contract and royalty disputes. In the film, Cube is depicted leaving because he did not feel like he was paid appropriately for his contribution to the group. Ice Cube has said that he thought it was ridiculous that Eazy and Jerry were living in mansions and driving luxury cars while he was still living at home with his parents. However, in his book, Jerry claims that NWA actually voted Cube out of the group because they were tired of his griping about contracts and royalties. Either way, Cube's relationship with Jerry soured, and he really did leave the group to go pursue his solo career. In the film, we see the label's co-founder promise to pay Cube extra on his second album if the first one was a hit. And after the success of Cube's album, America's Most Wanted, the deal was not upheld, which resulted in Ice Cube destroying the office with a baseball bat. Yes, the scene is completely accurate. When NWA heavily insults Cube on their next record, 100 Miles and Running, in 1990, he responds with the diss track No Vaseline, criticizing them and Heller. This, combined with Cube's association with the Nation of Islam, his outspoken criticism of the Los Angeles police in the wake of the Rodney King beating, and a starring role in the 1991 film Boys in the Hood, make him even more famous and controversial. When Ice Cube left, NWA lost their main songwriter, but the DOC soon stepped up to fill Cube's place. The DOC was already signed to Ruthless Records and had contributed to NWA tracks in the past. NWA released their EP 100 Miles and Running. It features a number of references to Ice Cube, including one that calls him Benedict Arnold, insinuating that Cube had betrayed them. In response, Cube released the track No Vaseline, in which he mercilessly disses each member of NWA as well as Jerry. The implied death threat towards Jerry, as well as mention of his religion as a Jew, led to criticism towards Ice Cube for being anti-Semitic. The hostility between Ice Cube and Ruthless Records is depicted in the film when Ice Cube and his new group, the Lynch Mob, are suddenly attacked by unidentified assailants at a music seminar. In reality, the altercation was actually with Above the Law, a Ruthless signed group. Much like what we see in the film, the fight really did include tables flying in the air during the wild showdown. However, Cube wasn't actually involved in the altercation as he was on a panel speaking when the fight first broke out. Dr. Dre hires the imposing Bloods gang member Suge Knight as his manager after Knight proves that Hella has been underpaying him. Dre leaves NWA to form Death Row Records with Knight, who has his men threaten Hella and beat Eazy-E to pressure them to release Dre from his contract with Ruthless. By the time of NWA's second album in 1991, Dre had already become unsatisfied with his deal at Ruthless Records. The DOC introduced Dre to Suge Knight, who insisted that Dre was not being paid appropriately for his contribution to Ruthless Records. In the film, we see Dre confronting Eazy and telling him that he needs to get rid of Jerry. This is true. Dre really did give Eazy the ultimatum of him or Jerry, and Eazy told Dre that he simply could not get rid of Jerry. According to Dre, that was the end of his and Eazy's relationship. In early 1992, Dre and the DOC really did leave Ruthless Records, with Dre and Suge Knight co-founding Death Row Records. In the film, we see Suge and his goons beat up Eazy in order to release Dre from Ruthless Records. This unfortunately did happen in real life. After this incident, Eazy speaks to Jerry and insists that he wants to retaliate by killing Suge. In his book, Jerry corroborates this incident and explains how Eazy was dead set on getting revenge by killing Suge, but Jerry managed to talk him out of it. Dre enjoys his newfound freedom and begins working with other rappers, including then newcomer Snoop Dogg. His debut solo album, The Chronic, sells over 5 million copies in 1992 and is critically acclaimed, even as he becomes concerned about Knight's violent behavior, and the community is rocked by the 1992 Los Angeles riots. So the timeline of this part of the film is not entirely accurate. It is true that Dre started working with Snoop Dogg and then went on to produce his own solo album, The Chronic. In the film, we're shown all of this happening before the LA riots, but that's false. Dre was actually recording his album during the LA riots. Rodney King was a black man who became a victim of police brutality in 1991 when he was arrested by police officers for drunken driving. During the arrest, an unarmed Rodney King was brutally beaten by the police officers. The incident was filmed, sent to a local news station, and soon became headline news around the world. Rodney was left with several severe injuries, including a broken leg. The officers involved in the crime would face charges for excessive force. But when none of them were found guilty, the outrage led to the 1992 LA riots. The riots lasted 6 days, with 63 people killed and thousands more injured. We see the riots presented in the film, and we see "Fuck the Police" become an anthem for the rioters. This is all true. So in reality, Dre produced his album while the riots were going on and not before, as is depicted in the film. When The Chronic was released, it really did go on to become platinum and solidify Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg's place as hip-hop legends. Eazy, whose fortunes and health have declined, learns that Hella has been embezzling money from Ruthless. He fires him and decides to rekindle his friendship with Cube and Dre, who agreed to an NWA reunion. During the reunion, Eazy collapses and is admitted to the hospital, where he is diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. Amid emotional visits from his bandmates, Eazy dies on March 26, 1995, and is mourned by fans. We see in the film Eazy having to foreclose his home and start packaging marijuana and move into a smaller house as a result of siding with Jerry. This is all fiction. When Eazy passed away, he was still a multi-million-dollar artist. There are also no news reports from the 90s about Eazy having to sell his mansion. He may not have been making as much money after NWA had disbanded, but he was still, no doubt, a very wealthy man. Regardless, Eazy really did sever ties with Jerry and rekindle his friendship with Ice Cube. Like we see in the movie, Eazy and Ice Cube really did run into each other at a nightclub and discuss reuniting NWA. However, it is absolute fiction that Dre was ever on board with the reunion. Dre and Eazy were still feuding at the time, and Dre had never agreed to work with Eazy again. In 1995, Eazy tested positive for HIV and passed away just a month later. In the film, we see Dre and Cube meet at the hospital. This is true. Dre recounts how the last time he saw E was at the hospital when he had to be put on a ventilator. DJ Yella was the only member of NWA to attend Eazy's funeral. Dre parted ways with Night and Death Row a year later to form his own label, Aftermath Entertainment. Clips shown during the film's credits highlight Cube's subsequent roles as a film actor and Dre's career as a producer and entrepreneur. Several famous rappers credit Dre with helping to launch their careers, and Beats Electronics, which he co-founded, was bought by Apple in 2014 for $3 billion. In the film, Dr. Dre witnesses Suge and his gangbanger buddies intimidating a man in his underwear with a dog in the Death Row Records offices. This is true. Dre explains that the scene really did happen down to the guy in his underwear. By that point, Dre was already wanting to leave the record label, and that incident pushed him all the way through to go and found his own record label, Aftermath. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube continued making music well into the 21st century, and they have definitely solidified their legacies as hip-hop legends. They both enjoyed incredibly successful careers, and following the release of the film Straight Outta Compton, NWA was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We can see from our analysis that there are some details that have been embellished or reimagined, but for the most part, the basic outline and the events that happened in the film Straight Outta Compton are accurate to the events that happened in real life. The film was a critical and commercial success upon its release. However, it was not free from criticism and controversy. Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and Eazy's widow, Tamika Woods Wright, all served as executive producers on the film. This definitely aided in ensuring the authenticity of the film, but it has drawn some criticism for glossing over some of the darker parts of NWA's history. One such criticism is the complete omission of Dr. Dre's violence against women. In the film Straight Outta Compton, we see Dr. Dre entering into and being involved in some relationships. However, we're never seeing any of his abusive behavior. Michelle is an R&B singer who is not depicted in the film, although she is mentioned once by name. She was actually a platinum-selling artist for Ruthless Records and dated Dre for 7 years. Following their split in 1996, Michelle went on to speak out about the abuse she endured from Dr. Dre. She cited a broken nose, several black eyes, and a near miss from a bullet Dr. Dre had shot at her as just some of the physical abuse that she endured. She never filed charges against him. Someone who did bring a lawsuit against Dr. Dre, however, was Dee Barnes. Dee was the host of a hip-hop program called Pump It Up, and she was also a longtime friend to the members of NWA. In 1990, following Cube's exit from NWA, an episode of Pump It Up aired with combined interviews from NWA and Ice Cube. Each of the interviews involved disses towards each other. Cube in particular made some especially cruel comments, which infuriated Dr. Dre. So one night, a drunken and enraged Dr. Dre encounters Dee Barnes at a party and he violently attacks her. Dee filed assault charges and brought a lawsuit against Dr. Dre, He pleaded no contest. He was fined, placed on probation for 2 years, and settled the lawsuit out of court. After the incident, Dr. Dre didn't show much remorse, while some other NWA members actually defended his actions, saying that she deserved it and had it coming. Dre has since apologized for his actions, admitting that he made some horrible mistakes that he wishes he could take back. Dee explains how, despite being the victim, she was essentially blacklisted from the industry. She says she was viewed by many as having ruined Dre's career by being that disturbing footnote in his legacy. The film's director, F. Gary Gray, has defended the omission of Dee Barnes in the film Straight Outta Compton. He explains that they needed to leave out a number of narratives in order to tightly focus on just the group NWA. Dee further criticized Gary from profiting off the film that erased her from history, and for being the one behind the camera during the interview that caused the attack on her. Yes, Gary was in fact the one filming the interview that she did with Ice Cube. Dee has called him out for not wanting to address his part in the history. But Dee Barnes was not the only one to criticize Straight Outta Compton for its revisionist history. Jerry Heller was unhappy with his portrayal in the film, saying that a number of false statements were made about him. He filed a lawsuit against Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and the production of the film, which was later dismissed in 2018 following Jerry's death in 2016. In the film, Jerry is accused of embezzlement and taking advantage of the members of NWA. But did Jerry actually screw over the group? Well, there remains no evidence of it today. Jerry explained that after Cube left the group, both Jerry's and Cube's legal teams audited the contracts, and none of them found any irregularities. It is also likely that Dr. Dre was not cheated out of his royalties, but instead signed an unfavorable deal, one that undervalued his contributions to Ruthless. Still today, there remains a lot said about Jerry's financial shenanigans, although no one from NWA has ever sued him. Dee and Jerry criticized Straight Outta Compton following its release. Someone who was not going to wait until the premiere to air his grievances was Suge Knight. He was allegedly angry at his depiction in the film and the fact that he was not receiving any compensation for his portrayal. On set, Suge got into an argument and was then involved in a hit and run that left one man dead and another injured. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison. This is the other deadly incident that happened during the filming on the streets of Compton. It's a reminder of the reality of Compton that still persists today, and I think the film does really well in capturing this. From the opening of the film, the viewer is presented with the visceral reality of life in Compton. In this way, Straight Outta Compton, the film, expands on the harrowing picture that is presented in Straight Outta Compton, the album. Ice Cube has always referred to his lyrics as documentary or reality raps. Never before had music so explicitly presented the issues that urban communities faced. As unapologetically violent, misogynist, and problematic as their lyrics were, NWA provided an important outlet to air the grievances of their community that had become very disenfranchised. Fuck the Police started a worldwide conversation about racism and police brutality. The song became increasingly relevant following the Rodney King beating and continues to be relevant during protests today. In 2020, following the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests, streams of Fuck the Police surged by 270%. Unfortunately, illuminating the fact that there is still the need to fight against police brutality and racial profiling. NWA's legacy cannot be overstated. Their anti-establishment and rebellious attitude challenged authority, the music industry, and dominant pop culture. They broadcasted commentary about their realities and issues and forced the rest of the world to take notice and listen. And I feel that the film does really well to capture the spirit of NWA. This is obviously the version of the story that the filmmakers and the producers, being the NWA members, wanted to tell, and they tell the story really well. Is the film a completely accurate retelling of NWA's story? No. We've already discussed how the film has overlooked some of the less favorable aspects of NWA, like Dr. Dre's violence, and how it has exaggerated other aspects, like Jerry's financial malpractice. But apart from these and a few minor reordering of chronological events, Straight Outta Compton stays fairly close to the overall truth of how NWA came together and perfectly encapsulates the defiant ethos that the group had. So this has been Film Reel. Once again, taking a look at the real truth behind films that are based on true stories. If you made it this far, please consider leaving a like if you liked it, a subscribe if you want to see more, and potentially commenting which film you would like me to cover next. Okay, thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye!